I don't know who is responsible. I believe we will know in 12 hours. If it is a kind of bin Laden organization, and even if it's something else, I believe that this is the time to deploy a globally concerted effort led by the United States, the UK, Europe, and Russia against all sources of terror. The same kind of struggle that our forefathers launched against the piracy on the high seas.
In your position as Prime Minister, Defense Minister, also formerly in the Army, were you ever aware of any incident planned like this?
Not in the dimensions, but different elements where there clearly there was an attempt on the Twin Towers a few years ago. There was an attempt to explode the Holland tunnel leading into Manhattan. But of this size and a simultaneous attack, I don't think that anyone had predicted it in advance.
Is it something that security services, intelligence services could ever have got wind of?
I'm not sure, but this is not the case. It really happened in front of our eyes, and the question is what should be done in regard to it in order to avoid it in the future. It's going to be a tough struggle. There will be many tough and painful moments along the way, but I believe that if we will coordinate diplomatic, operational, intelligence, and economic activities that will not let them land at any airport and will isolate automatically any nation that is ready to host terror or support them. By doing this consistently along 6 or 10 years, we will reduce dramatically this challenge to all our way of life.
So what do we do in the meantime in holding people and organizations responsible for the terrorist attacks upon the United States, September 11, 2001? In regards to holding people responsible, we must first investigate terrorist attacks responsibly. For the last 21 years, most people, including many people in the 9/11 truth movement, have not. They have been asking the wrong questions. Questions that serve us away from actual suspects who may be involved with foreknowledge or not sharing intelligence which could have prevented the attacks from even happening in the first place. Agencies like the CIA, the NSA, the FBI covering up additional hijacking of September 13th and even on September 11th. In the early onset of the preceding weeks and months of the attacks, we had a chance. The people had a chance, led by the steering committee, which are made up of the widows of those lost in the World Trade Center. They actually forced the federal government to enact legislation which gave us the National Commission on the Terrorist Attacks, the 9/11 Commission. It also helped to force the joint House of the House Permanent Select Committee and the Senate Select Committee to investigate the intelligence agencies, also known as the Joint House Inquiry. And yes, many of the questions that the steering committee had went unanswered, but at the very least, there was some level of success in forcing the federal government to pay attention, because the people were going to pay attention and investigate the attacks. And what happened immediately afterwards? Soon after, fringe conspiracy theorists started popping up. like Thierry Meyssan, a French author who actually proposed that the Pentagon was actually hit by a Russian missile. People like Alex Jones from InfoWars started spreading unremarkable rumors, which are not based on any evidence whatsoever. Jim Fetzer, a Wisconsin University professor, who actually endorsed many of the early fringe conspiracies, such as living hijackers, drone aircraft. Later on, films were made on the fringe premise of military drone aircraft without hijackers at all, such as In Plain Sight and later Loose Change. After Loose Change came out, which was endorsed by Alex Jones in the second revision, more people started coming out, started endorsing fringe conspiracies, started endorsing falsehoods, which led away from the investigations of hijackers and their connections to domestic and foreign intelligence, which could lead back to domestic and foreign governments. Instead, the 9/11 Truth Movement, more worried about quantity rather than quality, endorsed and accepted the likes of people like Christopher Bolin, Rebecca Roth, Barbara Honegger, Ace Baker, Morgan Reynolds, John Lear, Judy Wood, Citizens Investigation Team, Pilots for 9/11 Truth, and on and on. And because of this, and because of their ridiculous fringe theories, they basically destroyed the truth movement from within. A few dissidents, actual scientists from 9/11 Truth Movement tried to fight back, but it was far too late. The fringe conspiracy movement took over and hijacked the truth movement away from actual truth advocates such as Paul Thompson, John Gold, Kevin Fenton, John Judge, and others. These people became an afterthought, and at the helm, in front of the media camera, were people who were espousing living hijackers, drone aircraft, and other unremarkable claims. The media had a field day and interviewed the likes of Jim Fetzer, Morgan Reynolds, Kevin Barrett, and others. And what it did was basically cause destruction of the truth movement in the public eye, making them to seem that they were all irrational, proposing outrageous theories with no truth and no basis of fact within any of their statements, and that anyone in the future who would dare question the federal government or foreign governments of Israel and Saudi Arabia were made to look just as fanatic and ridiculous as those they interviewed. Was this done on purpose? What was the purpose of allowing these people to propose these ideas and destroy the reputation of the truth movement in such quick fashion? I couldn't tell you whether this was manufactured or not, but it sure seemed that way. Today, there are very few reputable 9/11 researchers and advocates, and they are just an afterthought. The real questions went unanswered, went ignored, questions that we must ask. It might be a little bit too late, but better late than never. We may have a shot in the near future if we can reach certain people in the 9/11 truth movement to basically get behind the real anomalies that took place on September 11th, and not the fanatic beliefs of living hijackers, invisible space beams melting World Trade Center towers, and even controlled demolition, regarding that there are no suspects involved, nor did anyone see a bomb anywhere at ground zero. Doesn't mean that the towers were indeed the victim of an unnatural collapse. Something that I don't actually entertain because I'm not qualified to speak on the physics aspects of the towers. I think they're meant to dissuade from asking the actual questions where there's actual suspects, such as why did not the CIA share information with the FBI or the State Department about 2 al-Qaeda operatives who are living inside the United States, who are being funded and assisted by Saudi intermediaries acting on behalf of the Saudi government? Or how come there were 2 major Israeli intelligence espionage rings, monitoring rings, maybe acting in accordance with one another or acting separately, involving the monitoring and assisting of terrorist affiliates inside the country, using an arch student ring located throughout the Southwest and Northeast, and a moving companies that hired Israeli students from abroad who were, in essence, monitoring Islamic fundamentalists, terrorist organizations inside the country, particularly in New York, New Jersey, and Florida. Why were they all not questioned thoroughly by the FBI, and why did the federal government allow for them to be deported, handed over to the Immigration Naturalization Service, and deported because they all violated their tourist visas, which were overstayed? What did they know? And what didn't they share with the FBI and the State Department, since these rings were not made aware to the federal government? Why did the Defense Intelligence Agency conduct an operation, collect metadata information about terrorist organizations inside the United States, particularly one that was led by Mohammed Atta, Marwan al-Shehi, and Ziad Jarrah, which was the Hamburg cell, and Omar Abdul Rahman of the Landmarks plot in 1993 World Trade Center bombing? Data that goes back 10 years. Why was it ordered destroyed when it shouldn't have been? On orders from Southern Operation Command lawyers, the Department of the Army lawyers. 3 terabytes ordered destroyed. The operation was called Able Danger. The NSA, who were monitoring a satellite phone belonging to Osama bin Laden, allegedly starting back in 1992. This satellite phone was monitored for 6 years until bin Laden stopped using it in 1998. And because of that phone, the NSA was made aware that a house in Yemen belonging to a bin Laden affiliate, which just so happens to also have another house visitor that would stay for a number of days, who was involved with the hijacking of American Airlines Flight 77, Khalid al-Mihdhar. That phone was monitored by the NSA from the years 1996 to 2001. Why were these operations not made aware to the State Department? Why was this information, whatever they were talking about on these phones, not declassified to this day? What were they talking about on those phones? What was bin Laden, or Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, or Ayman al-Zawahiri, or other al-Qaeda affiliates? What were they talking about on those phones? And why is this information classified? Why is the federal government continuing to protect the Saudi government from being exploited for their role in financing 2 or 3 people who were involved with the September 11th attacks, Khalid al-Midar, Nawaf al-Hazmi, and Hani Hanjour, known Saudi elements who worked for the Saudi government, such as Omar al-Bayoumi, Osama Basnan, Fahad al-Tamari, Muassab al-Jarrah, and others. Why were these people made to leave the country freely? Why did the federal government allow for the bin Laden family to leave along with other Saudi dignitaries in the days after September 11, 2001 attacks, where nobody else could be flying anywhere in the country? Why were they shielded from prosecution for their roles in financing these people? Why are they continued to be given protection from the Department of State under the Bush, Obama, Biden, and Trump governments? Why are they given such luxuries? Why, in the latest revelations of the FBI Operation Encore report, that now we know for certain that a Saudi government agency was paying a Saudi intermediary who was financing 2 people who were involved with the hijacking of American Airlines Flight 77 that crashed into the Pentagon in Khalid al-Midar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. Yet the media hardly reports it, and the federal government continues to protect their Saudi interests. These are the questions to ask. These are the questions that deserve answers. These are the questions that will lead, if asked, that will lead to an arraignment and maybe even prosecution for foreknowledge and maybe even participation at some level in the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001. But if we don't ask these questions, if we don't give these areas that I mentioned any attention whatsoever, then the people involved with the 9/11 Truth Movement and those who are independent investigators will continue to live in a state of paralysis where nothing is known and everything is to be believed.